I have been known to chronically oversalt things because when I'm cooking, I can tell that the dish needs a little bit something and I can't figure out. I always assume that it's either salt or garlic, and that is not always the case. Usually it's umami, so this is really gonna help with that. Hello, welcome to Sage and Stone Homestead. If you have not met me yet, my name is Heather. This is my farm. I have been on YouTube for a little while, and we have been homesteading only for a little bit longer than that, but we've been fermenting actually for a really long time. I've got my really fun kombucha over here, and I've been doing things like sourdough bread, which I didn't realize was a ferment at the time, and we most recently got into making our own hard cheeses, which is actually a ferment in and of itself in a different kind of way. So this video is actually part of a collaboration put on by my friend Anna over at the Fermented Homestead. I think this is the 3rd annual Fermented February, and I'm very honored to be part of it again this year. I know a lot of the people who are currently on my YouTube channel have found us through Fermented February, so it's a really fun networking opportunity for us creators, but for you guys, it's also a really fun way for you guys to get a hold of not only the knowledge that everybody in the collaboration has to offer, but you get a chance to win some really cool prizes. So how it normally works with these collaborations is you'll watch the videos that are going to be in a playlist. All of the videos will have this in their thumbnail, this little logo, so you'll know that that video is part of the collaboration. This is only day 2 of the collaboration, so there's not a whole lot in the playlist yet, but throughout the month, there's going to be additions every single day where different channels are going to be showcasing different ferments. You're going to want to watch those videos and make comments, subscribe to those channels. The comments are going to be what enters you to win a varying degree of prizes. I know one of the prizes is a water seal crock, which I do not have yet, but I really want. So I'll leave all the information for all of the channels in the description box below, but what we are doing today is straining this mushroom umami sauce that I've been fermenting for a couple of weeks. So many of you do know that I have started recently growing my own mushrooms at home. It has been an amazing and very rewarding venture for me. And one of the main spices that I actually like to use all the time in my cooking, let me show it to you. It's this umami mushroom powder that we can get at the Asian market. This one is actually, they call it the counterfeit. The one that I like to buy has a little note up here that says, beware of counterfeit. But this stuff is kind of expensive. And while I'm growing the mushrooms at home anyways, I figured, why not try to replicate something that I'm buying at the store and decrease my dependence on this thing, because this does go out of stock kind of frequently. Plus all of the benefits that come with fermented foods just by default, those are in here as well, and they are not in this package. I actually got the recipe out of this fermenting book. I have used this recipe book for quite a few things. I was very pleasantly surprised to see a mushroom ferment in there, and it's the mushroom umami sauce, page 232. So a couple weeks ago, I went ahead and opened this book and followed the directions. I did take a little bit of B-roll, so I'll show you what I did. The recipe does call for dried mushrooms, and we have been able to dry some of our mushrooms here in our freeze dryer. The recipe calls for 25 grams of porcinis and 15 grams of shiitakes, but it also says that you can use any mushrooms that you like. I used oyster mushrooms. And what I did initially was put the dried mushrooms in a mason jar along with some dried kombu seaweed and add some boiling water to rehydrate things. After about 20 minutes, what I did was add in some salt, onion, garlic, ginger, tamarind paste, cloves, and peppercorns. And the recipe does suggest that you start this ferment with like a culture from a previous ferment, like a sauerkraut. I don't happen to have a sauerkraut on hand, but what I did have at the time was some fermented cucamelons. So that brine is already active and has all the good bugs in it. So I was able to add a little bit of that in here as well, just to start everything off. And then all I did was add a weight and then put on this stretchy fermentation lid that I love. This smells amazing. It's actually kind of crazy. I wish you could smell it, but let's see. This is what we're looking at down in the jar. It doesn't look like a whole lot. That is crazy. Wow. So umami, if you're not familiar with that term, my mouth is watering. Oh, and that's the whole point of umami. So there's a few different tastes that we humans are able to detect. The 5 basic tastes: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's what most of us love in many different savory dishes. It just adds this depth of flavor. And actually quite a few fermented foods just are umami by default. And I actually looked that up the other day too to kind of figure out why. It says the fermentation process, like the curing process, breaks down glutamate into free glutamate and gives a stronger umami taste. So it sounds like in general, just the act of fermentation just by default creates a more umami type flavor, which might be why I love fermented foods so much. So what I need to do, this has been sitting for 2 weeks. They say you can let it sit for up to 3, probably even longer, as long as everything is remaining below the brine. I'm gonna remove my fermentation weight here. This is a pickle puck here. I like it. All right, so down here I have another mason jar with this funnel here, and then I have this stainless steel sieve that I really like. I know a lot of people suggest, oh goodness, I know a lot of people don't like to use stainless things for ferments. I always do. I don't ferment anything in anything stainless, but to use it as like a temporary, I don't know, pass through like this sieve, it's never been a problem for any of my ferments. So there's actually a lot less actual liquid in this jar than I realized, but we are not going to be throwing away all of this goodness, all the garlic and mushrooms and seaweed and ginger, etc. I'll show you what we're going to do with those in just a second. And this is the sauce that we were after. So inside the book, it says, we use it in place of Worcestershire and fish sauces, or whenever we need a touch of savory to bring all the flavors in a recipe together. And I have been known to chronically oversalt things because when I'm cooking, I can tell that the dish needs a little bit something and I can't figure out. I always assume that it's either salt or garlic, and that is not always the case. Usually it's umami. So this is really gonna help with that. So I'm gonna store that in the refrigerator. People always ask me, how long do those things last? I always say until they don't, until they start to grow something. Usually fermented foods last in my refrigerator for quite a long time if I let them, but this probably won't last super long just because I'm going to use it. Now remember, this is our refuse. This is something that I really don't want to waste. The book suggests that we dehydrate this and then grind it up and essentially use it to replace this umami salt that I've got here. So that's what we're going to do. You can really see all of the different parts here, the kombu seaweed and the mushrooms. It's pretty obvious to see those. So I'm just gonna spread this out on the tray. I may end up using 2 trays. Might not have to, we'll see. I don't want it to be piled up super high because I do want it to dehydrate, you know, as it should. So tucked away in the corner over here is my Excalibur dehydrator. Since we got our freeze dryer, I don't use it a lot, but a dehydrator definitely still has its place. There's many great uses for a dehydrator that a freeze dryer just cannot replace. Take off the things that I inevitably store on top of other things. I know I'm not alone. Dust it off, remind her that we love her, and turn it to 140 degrees after we plug it in. Okay, here's the plug. Put that up here. Alrighty, so this is set to 140 degrees, and the book says it should take just a couple of hours. I'm guessing because I'm using a silicone mat that I might need to kind of rotate things around in the dehydrator just so all of the sides of the food can get adequately exposed to the moving air in there so they can dry out. But it won't be too terribly long, and then we'll go ahead and grind it up. All right guys, so it's the next day. I know that our goodies are done in the dehydrator and we'll go get them in just a second. Did you guys notice that I had my shirt on inside out yesterday? I didn't, but today's a new day. My shirt is on correctly and it's time to finish our project. Well, here's our dehydrated goodies. Now, being that we dehydrated these at 140 degrees, I don't know if any of the benefits of fermentation are technically still living in this material, but that's okay. We still get to use them and not waste them. Pick up all of the goodies. We're just gonna pulse them here in my food processor. Be careful breathing it in. The ginger really does hit you, but I'm not getting as smooth of a grind as I would really like to get using this food processor. Whoop. Probably tell down in there that I do have some bigger chunks, and I really would like to have more of a powder or a granulated type texture, so I'm gonna pull down my spice grinder. Oh, I obviously did a really good job cleaning this last time. Look at that. This is actually tomato powder. I freeze-dried some tomatoes into tomato powder and used this to grind it up. It's fine. Tomatoes are also umami. This is what we've got going in. That's better. So that entire quart's worth of goodness dried and dehydrated down and broke down to this little tiny, what is this, a half cup of stuff. So this is very highly concentrated. Give a little bit of a taste. So it's not exactly like that umami powder that I have from the store. It's better. It's so hard to describe, but it's a more well-rounded, my mouth is watering again. It's a more well-rounded flavor that really just does activate every single part of your palate. Very good. This is well worth doing. And because the flavors and things are so concentrated, you don't have to use a whole lot in your cooking. You can see that little thing that I added into the jar. That's a desiccant pack. I like to add those to my dried foods whenever I pack it up, just in case there is any excess moisture, either from the air or a little bit left in the food. That desiccant pack, this is food grade. It is gonna soak that up and it will help keep our dried goods good. I did notice that the umami sauce that we made did settle a little bit in the refrigerator overnight. This is not a problem. When I go to use it, I'm just going to give it a shake and add it to my soups or stews or anything that I feel like needs a little touch of umami. Yeah, I would call this an absolute success. So I did notice that the book that I got this recipe out of is part of the giveaways for the Fermentation February 2024. So go ahead and leave your comment on this video and the other videos that come into the playlist over the next month or so, and you get a chance to win this book as well as many others, some t-shirts, a fermentation crock, and a Mason Tops fermentation kit. Thank you so much for joining me in my kitchen today and yesterday, and I hope we see you guys again soon.